I'm really glad that you could all be here today, and it looks like we have a nice full house. My name is Rose, and I am the Education Exhibition Coordinator here at the gallery. And before I introduce our lecturer, I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping items for the gallery. Our main washrooms are located on the basement level. We do have one accessible washroom on the main level in behind reception. And we have 3 fire exits from this space. Directly behind you to this in the stairwell, the big wooden heritage stairs you came up, and then we also have a south stair. And if by chance a fire alarm would sound, you would just take any one of those 3 exits to the main floor, and then you would exit the gallery from there. So tonight we're thrilled to welcome our guest speaker, Sean Antle, whose work sheds light on the beauty and resilience of Arctic landscapes. And Sean is an accomplished photographer and explorer with a passion for conservation and storytelling. His recent Arctic expedition, in partnership with the Churchill Northern Science Center, allowed him to capture breathtaking landscapes and wildlife photography. Sean's work not only highlights the stunning natural world, but also brings attention to important conservation efforts across our province. This evening, Sean will share images and experiences from his Arctic journey, exploring the transformative impact of nature and the profound lessons of resilience he has learned along the way. So we're so fortunate to have him here to inspire us with his insights and artistry. And I thank you all for being here, and please join me in welcoming Sean Antle.
He left.
Sean has left.
Imagine waking up, nice and snowy. The world where polar bears roam free across the tundra, waiting to see us free. Welcome to the Arctic Frontiers, life at the edge of a changing world. Good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing? I have dry mouth already, so I'm just going to throw that out there. So, I was thinking about tonight, and I wanted to start a little differently. So, if I could get everybody to stand up, if you can stand up. Even I have a hard time doing it. And what I want you to do is I want you to shake the hand of the person next to you, and I just want to say, I want you to say to that person, are you living your dream? I hope some of you are living your dream, and with that you can be seated. My name is Sean Antle. It's an ongoing joke in my family. A lot of people know my photography business name is Omi Nerves Photography. There are a couple of other Newfoundlanders in the building. And my father was born in Newfoundland. My mother was born in Leamington. And as a kid, I grew up going to Newfoundland every summer, and I just fell in love with Newfoundland. It is my real home. I live in Corunna. I was born in Sarnia, but home is Newfoundland. And so we always joke, Mom and Dad got married in '81, and they flew to Newfoundland for their honeymoon, and 9 months later, I came along. Been married to my best friend, Tara, who is also here. We have been married for nearly 20 years. We have 2 kids. Ethan is 13 and our daughter Callie is 10. We also have Nash, who is really the most loved one in our entire family, who is a Borador, which is a Labrador and Border Collie mix dog. As mentioned, and I still struggle from the ever can't kick imposter syndrome. But I am an international award-winning professional photographer, and aside from photography, my passions include music, and I always joke about, for the longest time, it was music or photography, and photography just started to take off, so I chose photography, and I still dabble in my music. In my studio at home, I have a guitar that every now and then I'll sit down and bang on that for a bit when it's getting tiring of editing. And I love nature. That is the biggest thing. I think if you follow me online at all, or if you've heard me talk before, I absolutely love nature. Over the past year, I have, long story short, and I shared this in another presentation, but I'm a huge advocate for mental health, and I have been off work for the last year on a mental health leave. And so I really champion how nature is an ever amazing and evolving way of therapy. Every time I get out in nature, life just gets better. So, yes. Churchill, I'm going to gonna try to keep it for like 15 or 20 minutes to just tell you a bit about Churchill, what makes Churchill so important, why I found my way up there from a little corner of Sarnia, Ontario, all the way up to the subarctic, playing and rolling around with some polar bears. And one of the things that drew me up there, Churchill is such a unique place. We have, if you see in these maps, and I don't know how big they are for the folks in the back, but right in that area, we've got Churchill. It's kind of like on a shelf right on the middle of Hudson Bay, which is the Arctic Ocean. You've got the marine ecosystems that are coming in through Hudson Bay. And then you've got the end of the boreal forest and the beginning of the Arctic tundra. So you've got 3 different ecosystems that all converge into one location. And when that happens, it is an explosion of amazingness when it comes to nature, from wildlife to weather to, like a week ago, I was talking to a couple of friends up there and it was like minus 48 ambient temperature. And you saw, I think in the one video there, just how crazy the winds get, and they're like that most of the time. So really unique place, really unique ecosystems. And what I found fascinating was how the last, I think, census was done in 2021. There was about 1,000 polar bears in the southern Hudson Bay area. When you imagine 1,000 polar bears with, Churchill has, I think it's 852 or 872 citizens. Do the math. Not all of them are in Churchill, but they are heavily situated in Churchill because over the years, polar bears got a little smart and realized that that is the first place that freezes. Literally in Churchill, not southern Churchill where you get into Moosonee and Moose Factory. That actually is a kind of a problem area right now, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes. The location and the significance of it is the polar bear capital of the world. There are other, don't quote me on this, but it's in the teens of how many spots around the globe where you can see polar bears. It is the capital. It has the most per capita, and one of the other big places that people go is Svalbard, Norway. It sits on the Hudson Bay, Arctic Ocean, and it literally is 1,000 kilometers, give or take, as the crow flies straight from Winnipeg. And then not that far above where we were in Churchill, you get into Nunavut. Climate, it's subarctic, cold winters, short summers. Contrary to belief, I didn't know this, and I was surprised, but their summers are just like ours. They get really hot, they're in the 30s, but they're very, very, very short. Last year, I think, was a great year for bears because the ice didn't thaw until, I think it was sometime into August. So that was a really, really good year for the polar bears. Didn't freeze again until November, early December. Cultural, historical. We all know the Hudson Bay Company. We know polar bears, an indigenous gathering place, and the amount of research and tourism and scientific work that is being done in Churchill is really what blew my mind. I stay with the Churchill Northern Study Center, and they are an organization that houses somewhere around 89, give or take, people, which oftentimes is either education, vacationers, but most of the time it is going to be researchers and scientists that are up doing, I think the longest running research project is somewhere in the 40 or 45 years. That's been continually going up in that area. So as mentioned, it's an intersection of marine and tundra and boreal ecosystems. Unique destination, not just for the travelers, but for scientists and researchers. What's crazy is they just, I think in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, give or take, have discovered dens for grizzly bears or brown bears. And now Churchill has the wonderful blessing to have almost every big game animal that you can think of, but they also have the trifecta: black bear, polar bear, and brown bear. That's a lot to handle as human beings and having to live amongst that kind of craziness. But one of the folks that was up there that I got to meet and hang out with for a couple of weeks was Dr. Douglas Clark. He has studied for, I think it's about 30 or 35 years now. Could be wrong if he's on. I should mention, I am live streaming this, so I think you guys are out of it. It's just out of it, but just so you all know, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. But his kind of job was to study the behavior and the interaction between bears and humans. And so he's crawled in a ridiculous amount of bear dens. And I mean, obviously for a polar bear, between November, December, February, March is about when the mama bears are in there and they're giving birth and they're raising their cubs. But I don't know about you, I wouldn't be so quick to want to be crawling into a polar bear den and hope that they're not there. So he was, I think, I don't know if he was the one but he was one of them, I believe, in the early stages that discovered that they had brown bears as well up there. The polar bears migrate in the fall. That's when I was there, from October 28th until November 9th. I was in Churchill, and they basically all just congregate as they wait for the ice to freeze. And the second the ice freezes, they're gone. And the way the locals described it was, it's almost like overnight. One day you're out on the tundra buggies, or you're out and you see a bunch of bears, and you wake up the next day and the Hudson Bay is frozen, and you go out and there's not a bear in sight. They're gone. They've taken off and they travel 30, 40, 50 kilometers in a day, and they're on that ice because they are an animal that they're opportunists in some ways, because as we get into a bit further here in the conversation, they've had to become that. And but their main food, their main source of life, so to speak, is seal. And if they can't get out on the ice, they can't hunt the seal. Arctic fox, silver fox, cross fox, and red foxes. I did not know that there were that many types of foxes out there. And when we arrived, I wanted to see the Arctic fox almost as much as I wanted to see a polar bear. But they said immediately, good luck, it's probably not going to happen. We haven't seen very many, and that so far into the season, nobody had seen an Arctic fox yet. And I said, yeah, but I'm a little different. I'm going to see one. I've got to be able to see one. And the last day that I was there, my roommate and I took one of the vehicles from the center, went out at about 8, I think it was 8 or 8:30 in the morning. And between that time and noon, we saw 2 male polar bears, one female polar bear with 2 coys, they call them, C-O-Y, coys are cubs of the year, so they've been born within the last 10 to 12 months. We seen a silver fox, a cross fox, a couple of red foxes, and we seen a Canada Jay or Whiskey Jack, depending on what you want to call them. But the very first thing we saw was we pulled into an area known as the shooting range, and that's where a lot of the tour groups and a lot of people will go because there are frequently animals seen there. We drove in and we both at the same time went, and then we looked at each other and we were like, hang on a second, did we just see what we thought? And we looked again, and sure enough, the Arctic fox was there, and we saw the Arctic fox for about 25 seconds in total in the entire duration. And I went out on 4 buggy tours out into the tundra. I went out probably almost every day on my own or with other folks that were volunteering in the center. I saw over 100 polar bears. I saw 1 Arctic fox about 7 hours before I left. And in that morning, like I said, I joked with my wife when I got back, I could have just flew up for that day. I saw 6 or 7 polar bears. I saw every kind of fox. I saw the ptarmigans. I saw the Whiskey Jack. And while I was eating dinner before they were going to bring me to the train, Lady Aurora came flying out with a vengeance. And so literally in 12 hours, I saw it all. So, but yeah, there's just a lot of, between the ecosystems and everything converging, that is what is so amazing about Churchill Wildlife Management Area. And we were also on the outskirts of Wapask National Park, which is where the polar bears, a lot of them, end up denning. And that's why it's actually a park you can't physically get into or go into. It's only scientists, researchers, government, and I mean, if there's a Nat Geo crew that wants to get in there and film, I'm sure they're going to be allowed in. Polar bears. Today, unbeknownst to me, and unbeknownst to Rose, who have officially invited me to come, today is International Polar Bear Day. And I didn't even know that, and neither of us knew it. And as we got closer, I was like, wait a minute, this is on International Polar Bear Day. So if you go online right now, International Polar Bears International, Polar Bears Canada, Churchill Northern Studies Center, all the tour groups, all of us are sharing about polar bears, and it's the day that was kind of dedicated to them. And the reason they chose this day is because right now, most mama bears are cuddled up nice and warm in their den with their babies, feeding their babies. Believe it's 38% fat content milk is what those babies are fed, and they have about 2 or 3 months to get as much fat shoved into them, because the whole time mom is feeding there, which I'm sure most moms are like in general as humans, they want to get the kids going on their own, and she has to get out on the ice as well. The longer she stays off that ice, the more weight she's losing, the hungrier she's getting while trying to feed the babies. So sea ice is extremely important to the polar bear. And before I went up, one of the things I was kind of interested in is, the climate's changing, we are getting warmer, and what does a polar bear, if the polar bears go extinct, how does that affect me down here in Sarnia? And that was kind of one of the other reasons that drew me up there, because you hear this talk about if the polar bears go extinct, and if bees go extinct, I forget the numbers, 6 months or 6 years, we'd be completely extinct and wiped off the map. And polar bears rely on the sea ice. And as that sea ice melts, it gives them less and less time to be out feeding. And you look at the whole chain reaction, from plankton all the way up to the polar bear, it disrupts everything. And that is one of the reasons that I wanted to go up and learn more about what's happening. And I found it, fascinating, but it's also scary. 20 years ago, I believe it was, in talking with a couple of the locals, 20 years ago, Hudson Bay would freeze in October, and now it's a solid month later. And so every day that a polar bear is off the sea ice, they lose on average a pound. So if they come off, last year was great, they came off in August, but it didn't completely freeze until about sometime in late December. August, September, October, November, December, that's 5 months times 3. It's 120, 150 days that they're off the sea ice, 120 to 150 pounds of weight loss. Adult polar bears it's a concern, but they're doing okay from the majority of what scientists and researchers are talking about. The issue and the concern is when you look at subadults, so ages 2 to 5 for a polar bear, or when you look at cubs. They're the ones that have the most concern. Cubs are hunted by male polar bears. When they're hungry, they will hunt, and we've seen it actively happen. And me and my roommate looked at each other that same morning, my last morning there. A male was actively hunting a female and 2 cubs of the year. And we're kind of going like, what are we gonna do if that male gets a hold of those cubs? Because we're both thinking, and everybody there is thinking, like, we don't want to see this happen. And he kind of looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, I guess we're just going to take pictures. Because that is, unfortunately, you don't want to see it, but capturing something like that enables you to tell the story of how a melting sea ice causes a male bear to want to hunt cubs, and we lose the cubs, and we lose the subadults because they're fighting for their survival, but they've lost 120 pounds because they've been off the ice for so long. As the sea ice melts, sea levels rise, and how does that affect us? Well, it trickles to the rivers, it trickles to the Great Lakes, and everybody I think here knows Sarnia-Lambton sits on a beautiful, wonderful floodplain. So when you look at the changes in climate, and you look at the changes in weather patterns, and you look at the sea ice melting, you start to begin to put together a picture of why this all matters when it comes to our survival, but also the survival of wildlife like polar bears. Human connection is something that I care a lot about. I'm very passionate. I'm passionate about people. I'm passionate about the environment. I'm passionate about wildlife. And one of the things that I learned while there, and before there, I planned for about 2 years for this trip. And part of my research was learning about their culture, learning about the history of Churchill. And being there, I got to see it, live it, and learn directly from the folks that were there. And then after coming back, preparing presentations, having discussions and chats and talking with people, I've learned a lot about the fact that the human connection with the Arctic is so strong. You think about 1,000 polar bears, 872 people that live in Churchill, only one in the last 30 years, one attack, back in 2016, I believe it was. How are human beings living alongside the world's greatest apex land predator? And a lot of that, I think, comes from the indigenous community that's up there. What happened to them in the 50s and 60s is an atrocity. We've all learned as of late, the residential schools. I read a book called Night Spirits, and it's basically the story of the Saïse Dene, who were basically told what they needed to do, and their kids were sent to residential schools. And when you learn about them and their connection to the land and the way they were able to live amongst these predators is absolutely mind-blowing. My own personal reflection on my own life. I say often, and I don't say this to down myself, but I'm a nobody. I come from humble beginnings, Sarnia, Ontario, and I managed to find my way up to one of the top 5 destinations on the planet. And I always reflect on that and kind of go, how did I get there? And for me, it's just a passion and determination at finding where it is I want to go and what I want to do and believing in that dream. And I asked you guys all to ask that earlier because in today's world, don't need to touch on politics, I'm sure we all know that from today and what's going on, but we've got a lot that's happening in our world today. And in order to reflect and look at nature and look at our lives and kind of bring them all together and realize that we have dreams. We can have dreams and we can see our dreams come true. If you knew me a year ago and asked me or told me you'd be given a lecture at JNAAG, I would have laughed at you, because this is something outside of Nat Geo and Canadian Geographic. JNAAG was 5th on my list. I wanted to be able to present my work in this prestigious place for Lambton County and Sarnia-Lambton and Southwestern Ontario. And so, chase your dreams is one of my biggest messages. Chase your dream no matter what, because, and it doesn't matter age, I'm 42. Life has changed a lot for me in the last couple of years and has led me to these types of situations. Protecting the Arctic is critical for a stable climate. We need the Arctic just as much as we need the sunny south end of Florida and everywhere else. We need to focus on what can we do as people. And something I've always said to people, I'm not on either side of the extreme belief when it comes to nature and even politics. I'm of the belief that we need to do what we can, little things, little tiny things. We have I guess I have a house joke. Family doesn't like it. They've gotten used to it, but when the weather changes, we keep our heat at 65 through the entire winter. And we fight all the way from summer, from about September, all the way into November, December. And my rule is, until I see a 5 on there, we're not turning the heat on. So if it gets to 59, the heat goes on. And am I making a difference in the grand scheme of things? The answer is yes. But when you look at it as a minute thing, it's like, well, I'm not really making that big of a difference in the world that I live in. But when we collectively all do little things, when you turn your lights off, when you put your heat down a degree, these are all things that we can do collectively that make a massive impact. If 8 billion people did one small thing, just imagine how big of a difference. When we talk about people that are heavily involved with that, Polar Bears International, like I said, they created today, International Polar Bear Day. They are huge advocates and have been up in the Arctic for about 40 years, bringing awareness and really pushing for folks to understand the plight of the bear. International cooperation, you've got scientists and researchers going back and forth between Svalbard and other locations, and Churchill studying polar bears, studying the melting sea ice, and what can be done. I don't see them. There was a couple that was supposed to come tonight. He approached me from the article that was done on my trip in the paper. And this guy in basically Courtright has drawn up plans for something that can replace sea ice for polar bears. My mind was kind of blown. I'm like, he's in Courtright, he doesn't know me, I didn't know him. He saw my article in the paper, and here's a guy that literally, I mean, his sketching and his brain is absolutely incredible. But he's invented this platform that could be put into the ocean and act as sea ice. Will it ever lead to something? Is it something that could work? I don't know. But that's the connection of our minds coming together, and that's why I'm here today. That's why I went on this trip and come back to share with folks, because a lot of smart people are in the world that just haven't connected with the right person yet, and we don't know where that next brilliant idea is going to come from. The CNSC, Churchill Northern Study Center, that's who I partnered with. They put me up, fed me 3 times a day, gave me a bed to sleep on, and in exchange, I've given them a bunch of my work, video, photographs for them to use. I also volunteered in the kitchen, and this is one of my favorite stories from this trip. December 29th, I got there in the evening of the 28th. I arrived on the flight with Dr. Douglas Clark and his daughter. They picked us up. We were about 30 minutes away from the airport, from Churchill. And when we get to the CNSC, Churchill Northern Study Center, Dr. Doug says to the driver, we might as well just do a perimeter check. And so we drive around the entire place, and I'm thinking in my mind, okay, they're probably looking for polar bears. We park, we get out, and Dr. Doug, I'm handing him our suitcases. He's not even looking at me. He's just doing this. And in my mind, I'm thinking, you guys are a little, really? So we get in. Next day, I'm volunteering. I'm working in the kitchen. Chef and her assistant come back in from smoke break or taking a breath or something out in the back. And the way you'll see in a minute where the center is, they have off the kitchen a little grated kind of landing, we'll call it, and then stairs down to the ground. And then right above that is the observation deck for the center. I walk out, I open the door. It's like -17. And I turn to the left, and from me to that elevator is a ginormous polar bear. And that's when I went, oh, that's why they're anal about trying to make sure that everything is checked, because that's how quick, how easy you turn a corner. And the joke is, folks in Winnipeg, they know someone's from Churchill by how they round a corner, because we would just round a corner like this. People in Churchill don't, because they do this. That's how they get around corners, and it's not a joke, it's the truth. One other quick story about 2 days later, I was there for Halloween. And everybody said Halloween is something that you have to see, like you have to partake in this. So I got in a center's vehicle with 4 or 5 other volunteers. And we went in, and one of the things I had done is I brought a completely separate suitcase with things to donate to local Indigenous folks to the center, and I brought about 500 and good pieces of candy. Not the junk that some folks like to give out, the good, real size things. I brought about 400 or 500 of those, and the way they do Halloween, this will give you an example of how crazy life is for those who live in this and breathe in this day in, day out. Half the community will go and they take, I think it's RCMP out there, but police, ambulance, electric trucks, fire trucks, tanks, whatever they have. And the way Churchill is built is like this. It's kind of like a U shape. And all the roads coming into town, they close off. And then they stand beside with a 12-gauge shotgun. And in the morning, they chase out any bears that might be in the town. Once they know that it's bear safe, they stand there with their 10-gauge, 12-gauge, 10-gauge shot, 12-gauge shotgun. And the other half of the community goes door to door. And then when they're done, switch. The other ones go and they guard the city from polar bears, and then the other kids get to go. And that was when I came back and said to my kids, like, life there is just so different. I've been to Africa, I've seen poverty, I've seen the second largest slum on the planet. It's different to what they go through every day. And the thought of living life always, literally, always looking over your shoulder, because there might be a 12, 13, 14 foot polar bear around the corner that has paws the size of that, which, by the way, the average paw size for an adult polar bear, elbow to tip of my hand, times 2. That's the size of a polar bear, average polar bear's paw, just one paw. Their teeth are like the size of your fingers. Their claws, you'll see an image coming up of where it's just enormous, like the size of your head. That kind of concludes kind of about Churchill and a little bit about the people, and but I want to go into the images. But before I do that, one of the things that I've already spoken to already is what I hope when I do these chats. I started with it and I always try to finish with it, is to inspire you. I can't communicate, there are no words, there's no way for me to express to you or convince you or prove to you that I was a guy that's always lived his life thinking, oh, why me? You're never gonna live your dream. And nobody gets to live their dream. Just the rich get to live their dream. And you kind of have that mindset. A lot of us have that mindset as we go throughout life. And I was at a vendor show in the spring, and a lady was telling her about this trip that was coming up, and she said, man, you're living life. You're living the life. And I was like, yeah. And she walked away, and I had to take a second where I kind of went, I've had a lot of crap in my life, but I'm going to the Arctic, and I'm hanging out with some polar bears. Life can't be all that bad. So I hope that you look at me as just a regular guy from little old Sarnia who just has a passion and a dedication to what I love and a dream that I've had, and that you chase your dreams, because age means nothing. Where you come from means nothing. How much money you got or don't got means nothing. I went, funny, I said to my wife, I want to go to Churchill to see the polar bears, and she said, who's going to pay for it? and she said, you better find a way to get up there if that's what you're going to do. And so I did. And what I did was I put together a package, and I went to businesses, and 14 local businesses sponsored me $10,000 to go on this trip. And then I reached out to CNSC, the Churchill Northern Studies Center, kind of pitched them what my goal with this expedition was. And they said, this is perfect timing. And they brought me up for free. So I only had to pay to get myself to Winnipeg and up to Churchill and back. And so mission accepted and challenge done. But that's my point, is when you're truly passionate about something, I had to sit back in that imposter syndrome a bit and go, like, are people thinking that they're just giving me money to go on a vacation? And what I do with photography is, it's therapy, but I also gave my all on this. And from this, I've been able to speak in local schools. I've been able to do a series with the library. I'm doing this here. And the ability to inspire people that just dream and chase it and never give up on it. And you just don't know where that's going to take you. It took me here. It's taken me to 30 countries just before COVID. And at the end of the day, that's my hope, is to inspire you to spread awareness, both from a conservational aspect. Polar bears don't live here. They really don't mean a whole lot to us locals here, but what happens to them and what happens to the climate that they're in will affect us. So we need to be aware of what's going on up there and down here, and we need to do what we can to make the world a better place, both from a natural perspective and a human being perspective. And then, chase your dreams, follow your heart, because you don't know where it's going to lead. That's my biggest thing that I want to leave with everybody here, is to inspire you to follow your dreams, to chase your dreams. And if you don't have a dream, find one, and chase it with everything you've got in you. I am going to move into what most people love the most and what I love the most. And we're going to spend the next 20 minutes or so looking at the absolute mind-blowing beauty of the subarctic Churchill. So that's the Science Center. That's kind of all the dorm areas where we all kind of sleep, is in there. Over here is the kitchen area. And in this building, you see how the building is actually made. It's quite different. You can't really, go back. You can't really see it from here, but underneath there, the building was built 6 feet up from the ground, and it's curved. And part of the reason for that is the winds are absolutely insane. And so the winds just go right through underneath. And because it's built like this and it's up 6 feet, polar bears aren't going to be able to get in. So that's another reason for it. You'll see actually I think it was on the intro video. Do you remember seeing the little bird when the video kind of zoomed out when we first started? That wall that bird was on is actually a solar panel wall. And I didn't know, maybe some of you did, but I didn't realize that solar panels aren't just for light. And the way that one is on the far right side of the building, when the wind hits it, as it hits it and goes through that solar panel, it warms the air up for the center. And they actually statistically spend significantly less on heating that building than they do feeding the people that are in it, which is quite crazy when you think about being up there, being in sub-temp zero weather for 8-9 months out of the year. So this is the back end of it. And here, that there is all science and research. So, I mean, I got to spend a day volunteering over there. They grow their own microgreens in a seed container on the other side. And they provide greens for the community and for the center. And they do it through a subscription base. So some of the locals get fresh lettuce when it's minus 48. It was just, I harvested it. Spent a whole day in there harvesting lettuce. And then we...
That's the solar panel.
Yeah, that's the solar panel right there. Right up there. And over on this side is where the sea can is. Do we get it in this one? I don't think we do. But yeah, just a really cool, the science and research and the things that they're doing to try to further the ability to grow greens and grow food in an area that it's really tough to do so. This is one of the coolest parts of this building. That is the dome, and they call it the Aurora Dome. So when the Aurora is out, they were telling a story when we did the tour of this building. One of the ladies, everybody was heading outside, so guys like me, right? I hear the Aurora's out, and I'm wearing this, and I'm not waiting, I'm running out, and I got set up my camera, I'm taking my shots, and I guess this one lady on one of these tours, she's like, I'm not going out in that minus 20 degree weather, that's insane. So she went and boiled herself a tea, crawled up the spiral staircase to the dome, put the chair down and drank her tea while she watched the Aurora. And that there, as you can see, is the observation. And when I came out, actually, I want to show this real quick. I'll show you where I came out and saw this enormous polar bear. It was right off the kitchen. It's coming up here, maybe. Is when we play that song. Right there. Nope, yes, right there. So I came out on that, and then on the next picture, you'll see the propane tanks at the end of this here. And that is how far I was away from that polar bear. And he was about 900 pounds, give or take. They class polar bears from 1 to 5, 1 being an extremely scrawny, skinny, bony bear, to a 5, as they say in Churchill, fatter is healthier. So I liked it there. But it was probably around a 4. And again, that's about 40 feet away from where I got to see it. Next, this was quite an unbelievable experience. This building over here is called Polar Bear Jail. If they have a bear that is a nuisance, so they can't get it out of the city or it keeps coming back and it's habituated to something, they'll dart the bear, they'll put it in that building for 30 days, and then after 30 days, they'll do this. They'll dart it again, they'll hook it up to a helicopter, and they'll lift it about anywhere from 50 to 200 kilometers north on the Hudson Bay. 7 bears last year was the number, I think was the final tally. It was only 7 that they had to do that with last year. So again, 1,000 bears, 800 people, 7 bears were an issue, and none of them were killed, and no people were harmed. And that's the really amazing thing that I can tell you about that, but until you go up and like put your hands on it and see it and understand how people are able to live with this is absolutely mind-blowing. I stopped the video there, but they get up another 3 or 4 feet and then they dropped, and they realized that it was just too much of a load. So they dropped mom off, and mom got carted back into the jail. Baby got taken up, and then they came back and got mom and brought mom back up. That's a whole nother story, because we started kind of asking the questions, okay, so like, how do you do that? Does somebody stay with the bear? No. So a baby bear, but what if it wakes up? And so I left it at the fact that the scientists and researchers and conservationists know what they're doing, so I'm not gonna question it, and they figured it out. But it's a really, you don't see it in this, but I have photos, I took photos. There's about, I'd say, a couple hundred people that are standing beside me watching this happen, from news reporters, journalists, scientists, researchers, conservationists, tours, myself, just a whole plethora of people that watch this happen, because it is such a big deal. And it's almost, to the locals, it's another sign of like, that's another bear that survived, and this is another situation where nobody got injured. And it's just a testament to what they're doing up there. That would be a job I think I would love to do. Yeah, and then they cart the bear off. They have its eyes covered. And this is, by the way, a cub. It's probably more like a sub-adult, probably 2-3 years old, and maybe not even that. One of the things I talk about as well is ethics in photography, ethical photography. I had actually this camera right here that's on here. It's called a DJI Action 4. It's magnetic, and I had it sitting on the top of the vehicle, and we were like, this is called Polar Bear Alley, and it's just outside of Churchill. So you go around here, and then you're on this straight run where you've got rocks on your right and the Hudson Bay on your left. And I mean, without question, every time you go down Polar Bear Alley, you see polar bears or something. These two guys we watched spar for about 45 minutes. Another thing they said to me when I went up there was, you might see some sparring, but it's not it's rare, right? I saw it 5 times. And this time, our vehicle's here, they were literally right beside us. There was one guy that got out of his vehicle, and we were screaming at him because we were like, I don't know what you're thinking. But they were literally right here. So much so that we gave up taking pictures because they didn't have a wide enough lens on at the time. So to be next to 2,000-pound males sparring is something that I will never ever forget. But what I talk about ethics is, look for signs. For those of you who are photographers in the room, or even those of you who aren't, respect nature, and nature will reward you. That's kind of the way I've looked at it. And we could have kept driving, and one of two things would have happened. We would have went through and said, see you later, or he would have rushed the vehicle, which would have been really cool, by the way, to capture, but probably don't want to endure that. But as soon as he got up, we knew right away. There were 6 of us in the car, and we just went, yeah, don't back up. He's told us, we're gonna listen. So we actually, because you can't turn around in that, we actually had to back out almost, probably 3/4 of a kilometer, all the way back out to get out of there. These are tundra buggies. So in Churchill, you can either do ground tours, or you can do tundra buggy tours. The tundra buggy tours take you kilometers out into the Churchill Wildlife Management Area, and this is where the bulk of the bears are, because they want that water to freeze, so they want to be as close to it as they can. My first day out in one of those, I saw 26 polar bears. Mind-blowing. And on another day, you see these lines. So one of the things they did is they put lines on these tundra buggies, and they put numbers on them, and that's however many feet it is. I could be wrong, but I believe that top line is 12 feet, I think. We were standing on the back, photographing, everybody was out, and we were right next to, the Lake Ness monster or whatever. He was enormous. And I was holding a 6-year-old girl. I had put my camera down, and I was holding a 6-year-old girl, and I was right next to Dr. Douglas Clark. And I wasn't being stupid, of course. I'm not stupid. But I was holding her up so she could see the bear. And so if this is the edge, we weren't at the edge, we were back a bit. And I'm holding her so she can see, and she's looking, blah, blah, blah. And out of nowhere, this thing jumped up. He put his head over top of that top rail and put his paw underneath. And I'm this close to a polar bear. That close. And didn't get it on video. Someone else did though. They got the video and they got shots of it. I had to jump back because I'm holding a 6-year-old girl. That's not my child. And so I jump back, and Dr. Douglas Clark just goes into like protector mode. And him and I are talking the bear down and telling it, no, bear, get down. He pops back down, and then he jumps up a little bit later, not as crazy, which I did get on video. But if I'm right, I know it's 10, 11, or 12 feet. That top line. He was over top of that. That tells you how monstrous these things are. I think the heaviest polar bear was 2,200 pounds that they have on record. When they stand up, and the average, I mean, they're 10 to 13, 14 feet in size. So like, imagine being in here looking at the top of that ceiling, looking at a polar bear's face. That's how big these guys are. Those wheels are 5 feet tall each. This was literally with my long lens camera zoomed all the way in at 100 millimeters, and that's how close he was. That image right there, they were about at that back wall from us, and they got even closer than that. And what they're doing there, it's funny, scientists and researchers around the world have not definitively stated or can prove, in fact, that why do they do this? Why do they spar? Is it like a dog? Are they just playing around? Is it playtime for them? Are they asserting dominance? Are they trying to figure out who's king of the castle for when it comes time to mating? They don't know. They're just theories at this time. But watching them do this is something that it's hard to put into words, to see that with your own eyes and not even have to look through binoculars or a camera. Just literally see that out your window is absolutely mind-blowing. And when you see, I've got an image, I don't know if I have it on here, but it shows the absolute insane size of their teeth. And you can see when they're playing, they're grabbing on the arm, but they're not closing their mouth. They're just like a dog would do in playtime. And then sometimes they get tired. One of the cool things, they are so hot right now, and so they lay on kelp. They make beds of kelp, or they'll. I don't think I have any in here because I haven't got to them. Every day I took 25,000 images. For those of you who are shooters with a camera, that's a lot. And I called through that and got it down to about 4,000. But every day I'm finding new stuff, and I have one image that I haven't got to get to yet, but there's a bear on the ice, just full flying eagle, flat on the ice, just like soaking up because they're so hot, their body temps are so hot.
Imagine if they were black.
This is their version of our goose. I mean, they have Canada geese up there, but this is like a prairie chicken or cobra chicken or whatever you want to call them. These ptarmigans, they fly in packs. And if you notice their feet, I think I've got a few more shots coming, but this is a cross fox. Why do you think they're called a cross fox? Cross on their back. It's actually a black line down their back, and then it intersects across their shoulders. They are a type of a red fox. They're a variant of a red fox, but the reason they were called a cross fox is because of the cross that goes across their backs. Foxes are insane there. I spent 6 years like focused on getting foxes until I finally had two cross the Highway 40 coming from Corunna to Sarnia last year, I think it was. There, foxes are like ants. Like you see them every day. Like we had one come right up to us with a ptarmigan that he had deconstructed a ptarmigan. That guy, the white bird, deconstructed it, had the breast in its mouth, and came right up to me. I could have pet him if I wanted to. The foxes there are just, which is not a good thing, but at the same time, they're not habituated to the people, but they are just because they're fed so well from ptarmigan and everything else. Arctic foxes are getting less and less in Churchill, and in 2019, I think it was, rabies hit them hard. But one of the main reasons that you're seeing less and less Arctic foxes in the Churchill area, red foxes hunt them and they will eat them. And believe it or not, an Arctic fox is a third of the size of that guy. So it's like a little cat next to a big German Shepherd. And so because the climate is getting warmer, the red foxes are moving further and further north, and they're moving into the Arctic fox territory. And I wish I had it. For those of you who might be squeamish, I apologize. I'm not going to show anything, but I wish I had got the shot that one of the other professional photographers that was in the area the time I was there, she got a red fox coming out of the woods with a decapitated Arctic fox's head in its mouth. That, again, you don't want to see it, but you want to take that picture because that is part of the story, right? That is a quintessential image that can be used in telling the story of a warming climate, of the changes that are occurring, because that tells it right there, the whole reason that's happening. And I'm just going to go through, and at this point too, the kind of formalities are gone, and I'm not really a formal guy, but if you have questions for me, we've got another 15 minutes, give or take. Give me some questions if you've got them. I'll be happy to answer anything, and I'll keep going as well so that we can look at some of the images. We thought that was this was in a parking lot at a townhouse area in town in Churchill. And when me and the other guy got out of the car, I'm lying on my belly right now, taking these images of him, and we look at each other and we go, no. That's not one of those road hockey orange balls that this fox is playing with, is it? And then when I took the picture and got it back, I zoomed in. It's an orange, but I was hoping I could have a fox playing hockey. Just I've always loved wolves and moose. Those are kind of my two favorite animals. But going up there after chasing foxes for 6 years, finally getting to here, and then going to that and seeing all of these different, I just love them. They're incredible animals. When we saw him getting the ptarmigan, he had just finished deconstructing it, saw like 30 photographers, went over into the bushes, dug up, slapped the meat in, put it all back. It was his food cache. And then he came out and said, okay, now we can chat. I don't want you stealing my food, but let's have a little chit chat. So right here, I'm on my belly in the snow, and he's literally 5, 6, 7 feet away. That is one of my favorite foxes, and that is what I'm slowly becoming. Silver fox, by the way. It's a joke. Beautiful animal, one of my favorites outside of the Arctic, just because you can't even begin to describe and the lighting wasn't the greatest here, and I've actually taken this image since and I've really brightened it up and did a lot more work on it. When you see them in like daylight, what a beautiful, stunning animal. There it is. Yeah. There's the one of 2 money shots that I got. And by the way, for the photographers or the gearheads in the room, I purchased, actually 2 weeks before this trip, I've been running an R7, which is Canon, it's a mirrorless. Just before I went on the trip, I purchased the R5 Mark II, which is the brand new flagship Canon camera. At 30 frames per second, so 1, 2, 3, there's 100 photos. And even though I took 1,200 photos of this guy in 20 seconds, I only ended up with 2 shots because that's how difficult it was. But you can see just how, you just want to take them home and cuddle them. And they dart in and out so quick, and just around this tree line is kind of all tundra, and literally we watch him and then we're all like, where'd he go? Because he just blended right in with the snow and you just couldn't see him. That right there is Churchill, Manitoba, folks. That's your polar bear, your Arctic fox, and your red fox. I still, in this moment right now, look at that photo and go, holy smokes, I was there and took that. Such an incredible place. This is another amazing thing. One huge fact about Churchill that many folks don't know, it is the epicenter, literally the epicenter for the aurora borealis. 300 out of 365 days a year, you get to see that in Churchill. If there's no clouds and stuff, if clouds are covering it, you might not be able to see it, but if there were no clouds, 300 out of 365 days a year, you can see the aurora. 7 or 8 out of the 13 nights I was there, I saw the aurora. And for example, this show here, you didn't have to look through the camera. That was what you saw with your eye. Which is the most impressive thing, because the storms that we had here, the geomagnetic storms in May 10th of last year, and then October 8th, 9th, 10th here, those were high on the scale for numbers. I think it was 5 or 6. I think it was an LP 5 or 6. Up there, this is like a 2, a 1, very, very low. When you get an 8 or a 9 up there, the sky is exploding with every color that you can possibly see. And we had that happen on the last night that I was there. We had that happen. You'll see that coming up here in a second. This is all off the observation deck that I showed you at the center. Very, very difficult. My parents and my wife know me. As you can see, I don't like to sit still. I need to move, I need to go. I love hiking. You can't see it right now, but look at the lakes and the boreal forest right there. I had to look at that every single day, and I couldn't leave the building I was in because you just can't. Because there are polar bears everywhere. And so that's one of the hardest things for visitors is wherever you go, you can't go. You're not allowed to go outside unless you're in town. When you're outside of town, you are literally not allowed to go outside unless you've got a bear guard or you are a PAL certified gun carrying person yourself, because it's just that unsafe. There's where you start to, if you've seen it on the screen, it would look a lot different than on this, but there are a lot of reds starting to peek through on that one. And these are the different days that we got to see them. That image is not because it's on a massive screen. Those legs are that size. Yeah. They are the size of about a 12-inch or 13 or maybe even a 14-inch tree. Like, they are tree trunks for legs. That was the second largest monster that I've seen on this trip. And they estimate that that's definitely a 5. Like, he is a healthy, raring to go male, probably north of 1,000 to 1,200 pounds, in that range. And he was one of those 2. And I didn't mention it. I don't know if I've got it coming up. I'll mention it again if I see it, but I have another image when they're sparring right there. And to me, it's such an amazing image, and it's kind of the flagship image for my gallery show or gallery tour that's kicking off. I think this July, I start at the Lawrence House, and I'm going to be at the Lawrence House, Elsie Craig. I'm going to be at the Gallery of the Grove in 2026. I've got numerous different, and adding to them all the time from here across the province. But this one image, I think, is going to be the flagship image, because in this other one that's similar to this, you've got the Hudson Bay in the back, you've got the tundra right here, you've got the boreal forests represented and then you've got the polar bears. And it's literally the three ecosystems and the world's largest land apex predator all in one image. And the history and the story that's behind that kind of an image is what makes it, I think, one of my favorites. I've got better shots, but it's one of my favorite.
If you were standing beside him, and I don't recommend it, where would you be relative?
Well, he's on his fours, on all fours.
In that picture.
Yeah, he's probably 7 or 8 feet.
So he would be taller.
He would be taller than me on all fours.
He's on all fours,
Yep.
and he'd still be taller
Yep.
than you standing up.
Yeah, quite a bit taller than me.
Wow.
By at least a couple of feet. And the average, even the subadults, if they're on all fours, are going to be close to my height. And I'm 5'10",
Yeah.
5'11".
So you see you've got,
Tags, yeah. So a lot of them have ear tags because a lot of these bears have been tagged. Some of them carry GPS trackers. So if you go on to, and I recommend this, when you go home, please go on to International Polar Bears website. They have live cams where you can see polar bears at different times of the year. And I believe it's on their website that you can actually go and monitor or see the bears that have trackers on them. And you get to see where they go on Hudson Bay. And it's super cool to see like the thousands of kilometers that these guys, I seen one where it basically went from Churchill all the way up to the most northern part of Hudson Bay and then made its way back down and across and over, and it's like just absolutely mind-blowing to see the distance these guys travel. This is the one with the teeth. So that tooth right there, you're looking at like this finger. They're the size of your fingers in when it comes to their teeth. And actually on that one you can see he's laying on the kelp there. I just love that. Right there, what he's doing, and they do this often, you'll see them and they'll be looking at you, and then nothing else will change, but their nose will curve because something caught their smell, and they can smell seal like miles away. Quick story about this guy. So you probably don't remember, but one of the first images of the polar bears when I got into the photos was one walking across a beach in long grass. He was walking along and then he climbed up these rocks and he got to right here, and then all of a sudden and took off like lightning. Out walked this guy who was 3 times the size of him. And I mean, I got a couple of other images, but imagine being in a car at the bottom. This is about 100 feet up and you're down here. I'm probably a half a click away from him. Power of my lens and cropping, and just when he came out, it was like, oh yeah, there's the image. Like he's there, king of the north, like even to the other polar bears around him. The people are just amazing. The guys that drive these tour buggies they're one of a kind. It's just amazing. This is what the inside of them look like. And it doesn't matter the age. You get little kids and you get some of these young older folks. You can enjoy it. Like that is another one where I'm just, I would not want to be caught. And like I said earlier, 2016 was the last attack. And both the female that was attacked and the male, old guy I think too, like he was well into his 70s or 80s, no offense to anyone who's in that age bracket, but he was an older guy, came out with a shovel and beat it off of her, and then it turned on him and dragged him down the street. Both of them survived and still live and work and breathe, and just another day in Churchill for them. In 2017, a group of artists from all over the world came together to put a spotlight on Churchill. Some of you may be familiar with the rail system and the port and how the U.S. company that owned the railway and the Manitoba government, the federal government, long story, talk for another day, how they've left Churchillians to just, anyways. They wanted to bring a spotlight to the community and really pump it up and turn some of the local locations into art, and this was one of them. This was another, in 1976, this cargo plane crashed. They left it in place, and they came and painted that, and that is one of the most well-known spots in Churchill that people will shoot photographs from. I got out of the van there, took my shot, and was yelled at to get back in because right behind me, about 40, 50 feet, was a polar bear. So that's the only time I got to see it and the only time I shot it. This is in the backyard of the center. Like I said, I mean, I just want to get out there and go, but one of the funny things is when you get into the tundras, polar bears aren't actually white, just to make sure anybody who thinks they are. They're not white. They're actually more yellow than they are anything. Some are a little more creamy yellow. But that's the biggest problem with these darn things out on the tundra. You can't see them. And like we would come up on them and nobody would see it, and all of a sudden it moves and you're like, oh, not a rock, that's a bear. They hide so well, and they don't hide purposely. I mean, they're just sitting there, just chilling out. So I've got a couple of minutes left. If you have any questions, feel free to ask now. And I'm just gonna fire through these last few. Like they are, and their feet are built just like the polar bears almost, with the hair. They taste delicious.
Do the locals actually hunt the bears?
Yep. Not the bears. They hunt the ptarmigan. We had a wolverine that this one guy got a picture. Thomas, he's with Discover Churchill, another tour organization. He comes in one day and he goes, check this out. And it's a picture of a silver fox, a wolverine, and a crow all in one image. From across the lake, the silver fox and the wolverine ran at each other and then stopped, kind of sniffed each other, I guess, and then started walking together. I mean, come on. Like, who gets to see that? But wolverines, they'll hunt the wolverines, they'll hunt the ptarmigans. Churchill has 20 tags a year for polar bears to kill. You're not allowed to hunt them in Churchill. Those 20 tags are if I'm out on a tour and a bear attacks me and they have to put it down, that's a tag. If a bear comes into town and it's a nuisance and they have to kill it, like the one they did in 2016 when it attacked the other two, that's a tag. When you move further up into Nunavut and you get into England, I forget the next name. Yeah, like the different communities up there, they still actively hunt polar bears because it's the Inuit communities, and so they are allowed to hunt a lot differently than they are down in Churchill. That is a white-rumped sandpiper, only bird outside of a raven that I saw on the trip. That's the image right there. I just absolutely love that. Tell me you don't hear the bare necessities playing in your head right now. Like 100%. And that was my first bear that I saw. That was from the observation deck. He is a monstrous bear. That pad, like I said, is actually, I mean, if you take two of us guys in here and put our elbows together, that's the size of that pad. And believe it or not, they're made like snowshoes. They act like a snowshoe, so they don't sink into the snow. They walk on top of the snow with them. Hey man. The utter sheer power.
Do they make a lot of sound when they're doing that?
Bears, polar bears actually don't make sounds. They don't roar, they don't. We heard them, we heard these two bears, like one like that was it. They don't make any sounds whatsoever. They're completely silent bears, unlike a black bear or a grizzly bear, which will make a sound.
Well, were you hearing sounds from when they get together?
Oh yeah. And two things in this image. What do you notice? The breath between them, and the shape of a heart. Wish I'd taken that on purpose, but I didn't. And I didn't even notice the breath between until I got into editing it. And I think that's the last one. So I'm really grateful that you took time out of your evening to come hang out with me here at the JNAAG. I still can't believe that I get to say that. Rose, you'll never know what it means to me. I'm very, very grateful to have been able to be at the JNAAG, and someday I'll have a show here. But for now, this has been amazing, and I'll leave you with the fact of, if you have a dream, chase it with everything you've got. Because, again, a year ago, would I be standing at JNAAG giving a lecture from an expedition up to the Arctic? I would have laughed at you. But here I am, and I'm living proof that you can chase and live your dreams no matter what age. So thank you guys, and I appreciate your time. Grab, actually, I don't know if I'll have enough, but before you, as you leave, where's the box? Is it in there? It's almost March, but everybody gets one of my calendars for 2025 as a thank you for coming out. These are all mostly taken here. The image on the front is really what got me some recognition. That image on the front is a Great Blue Heron. I captured that in Centennial, and that was Canatera. That was runner-up for Canadian Geographic Photographer of the Year. All other accolades that I got this year, this is probably the biggest one. You can go on my, if you get my card before you leave as well, you can go on my social media and stuff. When I opened this, I just about had a heart attack. This is my image on the cover of a Canadian Geographic, anything, doesn't matter what it is, it's on the cover. And I didn't know, I knew they had chosen two of my moose images, because I have, I'm caught up on something now.
Polar bear guy.
I was caught on that. Anyways, I won't use that for now. But that's the image there, and then I also took those two images. And then they used one of my other ones in their polar expedition. That is an iceberg from Newfoundland. So these are just some of the things that I've been blessed with in this journey. And you've got one, yeah, you're my parents. I'm pretty sure they're solely floating in my photography business. Because they have more of my art on their walls than I have on my own walls.
You're the parent.
We have more business card. Thank you. But yeah, you're welcome to go. You're welcome to ask any questions.
Someone from this area going to snow like that, was it hard for you to see? Not with your lens, I mean just your regular.
Yeah, so I mean the thing is, like, I actually love when there's high winds and snow because it adds a really cool effect to your images. But one of the struggles I have, even here, as much as up there, when you've got the wind in your face and when it's cold, the eyes just, I don't know about anyone else, but my eyes are just pouring, and so I've even had to wear goggles sometimes when I go out and just rely on that.
What was that website, International Bear?
Polar Bears International. Polar Bears, just remember Polar Bears, remember International, and you can Google that. Today is one of their biggest fundraisers as well, so if you're into donating stuff to causes, you can donate to that today. And yeah, they are a really, really, really cool organization.
Do you hear any stories of encounters with the brown bear and a polar bear?
No, so every photographer that lives up there is like just waiting for the day they get to see, because it's a known fact that if a polar bear and a grizzly bear went at it, the polar bear is going to kick his rear end. Like, there's not an animal on the planet that is a bigger predator, apex predator, than the polar bear. Like, they are the land predator of the planet, and they'll even take, like, now, I didn't even mention this before, but one of the things they're doing for food is they've started to learn how to hunt beluga whales. Yes. And so they've started to hunt those, because beluga whales come to Churchill to what do they call that? I want to say breed, but they come to the Churchill River every year, and July, August is the time when you can go there to see them. But they've started to go at them. Yeah, I'm waiting for the day that a brown bear and a black bear and a polar bear all walk into a bar and who wins. Thank you, folks. Appreciate it.
So you know where Hibernians and Hebrew,
Yeah.
140 miles, I think, something.
Yeah.
You gotta report it.
Yeah, so actually, people don't realize that my aunt lives, well, my dad's in St. Louis, and she's got a picture of a they haven't come that far in. And then depending on the season, you can definitely see them coming in. And even on the longest areas, mitigate areas.
Concerning part about this, 250
Yeah.
north.
Yep. And that's the thing, right? Like, there's cool aspects to it, but then there's also the question of why. Why are they here? Why is that happening? And like I always say, I say it loud and proud. I want to have full respect. I'm very
Domestic was in question.
I believe that climate change, but I'm not a bang on your head. That's one of the things that I've always said to people. Things are changing, and I have no question. Figure out how we can just a little bit, each person is just a little bit, and we'll make it as because we should or I moved up north. 9 months in winter, 3 months in summer. Just there last week. Yeah. 3 years ago, on St. Clair was one of the biggest years. We were up counting one day, and on the north end of State Island, there's 32 eagles. Yeah, which is a bounce back because before 2010, we hadn't seen any
You got a photo?
Kids card?
How many millimeters is that? 300.
They're one of my favorite. We every summer we go up to her friends. Close to Lake Hardin area, or in Ontario, and we went out. What was it for? That's 100, 500.
I was going to say 500.
And we went out and I seen a family. Same thing. We went out and it was and every year we've gone back. Families there. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Thank you for coming.
J'aimerais bien aller voir une aurore boréale.
There's nothing left. Compare at all. And when you're out in that kayak and they do it right next to you.
My favorite picture is right there.
You know what? You are probably the third person in 5 years that's actually got that. Everybody's. Yeah, we spent some time there.
That's totally amazing.
I had to front.
That's hard to fathom.
It doesn't make sense.
Go to the garden. We're there every single day. Which you're not sure if you were to change that aspect and kill it. Yeah. You bounce back to. Wow. Yeah. similar to like the story of the
I want to.
Yeah,
A lot of people always ask,
Yeah.
oh, are you going
I
to
just
Japan?
think
No.
American Wolf
Because
is a book by Nathan.
I don't have patience when he's taking
Hearing the video. They touch on
It sounds terrible, but he could spend hours, and I'm like, I want to see it for like, I'm good for like an hour or two, and then I want to yeah. So I let him get kind of all of that out of his system a couple times, and then I'll go up, and then I can just enjoy it. I do definitely want to though. Yeah, thank you.
Were just flowing, it was amazing. And the Wolverines came, because I wasn't sure how to do it. And the Wolverines came and put the on the shoulder, like, and I'm thinking, I'm afraid to sit.
Yeah. Well, their claws on those guys are insane.
But not here first.
Well, what I didn't tell in that story was the galaxy that was up in the sun. We picked this up in the airport, she's indigenous. And a couple of years ago, someone was spotted